I've, M50, got two stepsons, who I just call my sons as I've been in their life since they 8 and 10 and are now young men. My wife and I made it a point to have a great relationship with their dad, Jason, and made sure he had a chance to be around as much as possible, even staying at our place frequently to be around his boys as he lived over an hour away and couldn't afford to live closer. Jason had a crazy ex-wife who had tried to claim they were married, variously saying common law, or that they were married in secret, or married on an Indian reservation. But he had a restraining order out against her because she was nuts and had tried various ways to screw up his life. The ex is a horrible person. She had been arrested several times for forgery and fraud. She and Jason had a fiery relationship, but he had it in his head that he should make it work as he did like her daughters and grandson. But the ex got him sent to prison for violating his probation when he left the county to go to his mom's funeral and hadn't filed an appropriate form. I'm a little unclear on this part, but she played a major role in it. After he got out several months later, she wanted him back, and he wasn't having it. He made a clean break, moved to a new town, but she continued to harass him, thus leading to the restraining order. She would send texts to people pretending to be police investigating, saying he was drunk driving or taking drugs, or pretending to be friends/family to spread rumors and hurt him. She even sent texts to my kids from burner phones, pretending to be other family or friends, saying awful things about their dad. Jason died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and it was a shock to all of us. He was finally living in peace, had great relationships with friends and his sons, and was the happiest he had ever been. He didn't have much. He lived in a single wide trailer a friend had let him stay in for free, some boxes of tools, old comics, video games, D&D books and modules, mementos from his times in the Marines, and an old 2009 pickup, which on several occasions he had promised my oldest son, let's call him Paul. Jason didn't have a will, and my wife became the executor of the estate because at the time of death, both the sons were minors and sole heirs. We packed up the things out of Jason's trailer and took the truck, which had Jason's name on the title, but had to wait for the death certificate to retitle it in Paul's name. But the ex called Jason's sister demanding the truck, saying it was hers, and posting on FB she was reporting it as stolen, etc., which really pissed me off. After we got the death certificate, we went to the DMV and found out that she had stolen the title to the truck by forgery, saying she was the only heir and we couldn't transfer the title. My son was driving around with a packet documenting everything in case he was pulled over for driving a stolen vehicle. We had to get a lawyer and start a special process that took several months before a director at the DMV fixed it, and we were able to title the truck with the ex continuing to threaten and cause problems, and made everyone miserable and cost us several thousand in legal fees. Early last year, we got through probate court. The ex never showed, in spite of saying that she was the wife and sole heir. The court declared the boys as the sole heirs and my wife as executor of the estate in their names. Instead of showing up, the ex sent an email to the court saying she couldn't make it because of work, she doesn't have a job, and that Jason was never around his kids. He didn't miss a single HS football game home or away, and never missed a home track meet, and that they were just leeching off his SSI for the back child support. She went on with a bunch of other non-relevant shit, just to trash my wife and sons, and pretty much said it didn't matter what the judge said, that she should get everything. During this time we found out that Jason's name was on the deed of the ex's house. In order to get a reduction in property taxes because of Jason's disabled veteran status, she had filed papers to put him on the deed, but not the mortgage. If she had just left my kids alone, we would have let it go. But she had pushed principal beyond the point of denial, so we filed suit for half the house. Property is worth about $380,000. We went to court-ordered mediation, and she rejected a mediated settlement of a fraction of the value, which we would have taken. In April, her lawyer dropped her, and so she got a continuance on the first hearing. She then claimed that she had found a will from Jason designating her as sole heir, in addition to another signed paper that she found as a quitclaim deed from Jason for the house. I did wonder if it was this or her not paying him which caused him to drop her. She was going to go back to probate court to reopen, appeal, probate, and needed time for that, which the judge granted. On Tuesday, finally went to court on the deed to the house. She no-showed. The judge had inquiries to the probate court, and she never filed any papers. The trial lasted less than 10 minutes as the judge recorded the facts and awarded the estate half the property. They will impanel 3 lawyers to determine how the property will be sold, and she's going to lose her house, and for the first time in her miserable life, face the consequences of her actions.
Next story.
Until 3 years ago, I lived at both of my parents', 1 week at my mom's and 1 week at my dad's. 10 years ago, so literally less than a year after the divorce, he was living with his new girlfriend, whom he was not going out with before he left my mom. Yeah, right. Said woman got 2 kids, 2 horrible entitled brats, but I kind of pity them because it's their mom's fault if they're like that. Anyway, back then I was still living with my dad, his entitled/narcissist girlfriend, and her spawns of hell. The youngest, who was 8 years then, is even worse than her brother, and she did not get better growing up. When you imagine the cliched high school bitchy bully girl, you see her. She was spoiled rotten by her mom, and she believes she's entitled with everything. The worst is that she's actually really pretty. Academic-wise, she is doing remarkably well. She's popular, and she is captain of her school's basketball team. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against achievements or successful people, but I do hate people who have everything in life and feel like they have to rub it in others' faces and make them feel miserable. When this story happened, she was just 8 years old, but she was already a pain. What happened is she waited for the parents to be gone for a romantic dinner/evening, leaving me as a babysitter. Back then, I was like 13 to 14 and had to watch 3 kids, and needless to say I wasn't paid. Everything was going okay. She and her brother did try to trigger me, but I had figured it's better to just ignore them. My little brother was in the basement playroom, building Legos. About 10 minutes before the parents got back, we knew because they called to tell us they were about to get home. The shitty brat trashed her bedroom, knocked her own arm on her bedpost to get a mark, and hid her saved-up money in my brother's room. When the parents arrived, the show, and the crocodile tears, started. She was crying and wailing that my brother hit her and stole her money. They went to my brother's room, found the money, and my little brother got badly grounded, and he wasn't given a single chance to explain or defend himself. Much later that same night, I was in my little brother's room trying to comfort him. But what do you want to say to a little kid who believes his father doesn't love him? Then, the little bitch creeped in, and with the worst smug grin ever, told me what she did. She said, "I remind you she was 8 back then. Soon your dad is gonna send you away to live with your stupid slutty mom. I can't wait to see you 2 retarded fuckers get out of my house." And she left. I was furious beyond words. The next day, when we kids got back home from school, and the parents were still at work, I was doing the dishes of the morning because my stepmom and her kids never cleaned up after themselves. The little brat came by and complained about how lousy a maid I was, and she said, "You're almost as retarded and useless as your brother." She almost spat the last word and taunted me, saying that it was just a matter of time before my dad sent him to an asylum for retarded people like him, as she said. Listen, I'm not a violent person, but I couldn't stand it anymore. I grabbed her by the collar of her shirt, slammed her against the wall, and took up a knife to her throat and said, "Listen to me, you little bitch. I am done with your shit. You want to pick on somebody? Fine. Come after me. But if you ever do something to my little brother, if you ever insult, hurt, or frame him ever again, I will kill you. And don't worry, I don't care about going to jail if it means the world is rid of the waste of a human you are." My life is hell as it is, and my little brother is the one good thing I got left, and I'll be damned if I let you torment him. Got it? And I pressed the knife more on her throat, enough to hurt, but not enough to draw blood. She was petrified, her eyes wide with pure terror. It was the first time, and the last, that she saw me angry. She never bullied my brother after that, or me for that matter, and she never told the parents. Every once in a while doing the dishes, I'd grab a knife and smile at her. I told my brother years later, and he told me he knew I had done something because, okay, proud sister moment. You've always protected me. I don't need a shitty dad when I got a superhero for a big sister. I cried. And I regret and thing.
Next story.
This happened back in 2010 when I lived in Winter Garden, FL, with my husband and his dying uncle. Background: my husband and I moved in with his sick uncle after losing so much during the 2008 housing market crash in the U.S., like many of my husband's lawn maintenance customers. We also moved in with his uncle into a condo because his uncle had stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver, and his self-entitled sister and her family refused to help take of him. My husband, a retired Seminole County Sheriff's officer, important later, and I got ourselves set in the condo's 2 bedrooms, as his uncle had himself set up in the living room, including his bed. On the first day, we found dangerous black mold caused by a leaky dishwasher. On the second day, we found the master shower had loose tiles and a leaky showerhead. On the third day, we found a nest of brown recluse spiders in the living room. We talked with his uncle about these problems and found out that the slumlord, friends with self-entitled sister/aunt and her family, was refusing to take care of the issues as required by law. We wanted to start legal actions then, but my husband's uncle talked us out of it several times. The slumlord was nice to us so long as my husband's sick uncle was alive. The very next day after my husband's uncle died was a completely different story. Slumlord had turned nasty, aggressive, and began to try and strong-arm evict us, like we were nothing more than drug-addict squatters. Slumlord even bowed up and aggressively tried to fight my husband when we dropped off our next rent check. He kept telling us that we had to move or else, but yet refused to follow actual FL laws to evict us. Slumlord and his corrupt Winter Garden PD code enforcement officer wife even recruit my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle to start harassing about just moving even if we had to live in a tent. Self-entitled aunt: why don't you and my RSO nephew just move so they can rent the condo to another senior? Husband: we don't have anywhere else to go yet, and he must go through eviction laws or get into very serious trouble. Self-entitled aunt: you're nothing but trouble. Retired SCSD officer nephew: you've been problems since the day you were born. Get out of their condo and stop being a problem for everyone. Who cares if you have to live in a tent? All of this made my retired SCSD officer husband, who specialized in uncovering corrupted law enforcement, very suspicious. We talked and began investigating slumlord and corrupt code enforcement wife. My first order was to place all rent into escrow with evidence of repairs that have been neglected. Second, I sent a notification of cease and desist of harassment to the slumlord and self-entitled aunt. Next, I researched public property tax records. Woohoo! Pay dirt there. Slumlord's condo wasn't registered as a rental property with the state of FL and was paying far less in property taxes than slumlord should have been paying. Property tax records also showed that slumlord did not own the condo. It was still deeded to his mother, which I found out had been living in a retirement home for 5 years before my husband's uncle moved in. My husband found out that corrupt code enforcement wife had been inspecting and signing off on hers and slumlord's properties, including the condo, which is against FL code enforcement conduct laws. I found out from neighbors in the condo that slumlord had only been renting to seniors with severe health issues. My best discovery, though, next to tax evasion, was finding out that the Condo Owners Association had a very strict no-renting/leasing policy, meaning you or family had to live in the condo and couldn't be rented. The revenge. Now that we had all of our evidence, my husband and I began to knock down all of the slumlord's dominoes. My husband went and filed a complaint with the Winter Garden Police Department about corrupt code enforcement wife and her perjuring inspections on her family properties. My husband has a glowing record in Seminole County and with the FDLE for having over 200 clean arrests and taking down nearly 60 corrupt public officials, including Child Protective Services in the early 2000s. This background helped push WGPD to open an investigation into corrupt code enforcement wife. They discovered that not only had she perjured inspections on her family's properties, but also on my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle's property as well. This got corrupt code enforcement wife fired, stripped of her state enforcement officer's license, and convicted of multiple crimes. I sent all property tax fraud evidence to the FL's Property Tax Division. That got the state to investigate Slumlord. The state found that not only did he commit property tax fraud on the condo, but also on a property that he was renting to his son and self-entitled aunt's son, along with business tax fraud and income tax fraud. Both Slumlord's son and self-entitled aunt's son were also busted for possession of illegal narcotics with intent to sell when investigators came to the rental house they lived. I never expected that much fraud to be found from all of this, but I'm glad it happened. The business tax fraud of Slumlord affected self-entitled aunt and self-entitled uncle as well, since they were his business partners. Self-entitled uncle then came under investigation by the USPS board as he was the postmaster of Winter Garden. Self-entitled uncle lost his comfy job and pension after it was discovered how he was assisting Slumlord in the tax fraud scam and for stealing money orders. All four were convicted of multiple white-collar crimes, had to sell their properties and most of their stuff, serve some form of time, and pay huge amounts of fines and restitution. Slumlord, his wife, hubby's self-entitled aunt, and hubby's self-entitled uncle, along with their sons, all went down for multiple crimes, both felonies and misdemeanors, all because they thought they could strong-arm evict us. Just proves how smart we tenants can really be when pushed. Also proves why everyone should know all rental laws and how to research public records, because it can save you in the end.